if we're starting with Steve's paper on the death of resistance, which was, as you say, published in Family Process in '84, and actually, he had started submitting it in '79. That there's been evolution, but also the idea of resistance, client resistance, was there before this paper, The Death of Resistance, because generally in psychotherapy, back to Freudian psychotherapy, there was a notion that there were resistant clients, and that was a quality that the client had that the therapist had to respond to. Steve gets into it in the context of family therapy, and when there was a shift into family therapy, they looked at the family as a system, and they looked at it as a closed system, and treated it as oftentimes going toward a homeostasis or a balance. And that balance meant that they would resist therapy at a clinical level. It meant they would be resistant to therapy. And Steve, in his paper, The Death of Resistance, insists that we should look at family therapy as a system, which has got a couple of subsystems, the family, but also the therapeutic subsystem. And rather than seeing these as closed systems, sees them as open systems with communication. And the therapeutic focus then shifts toward a focus on change. And the therapist then comes to expect change and sees herself or himself as promoting change rather than countering resistance. So it becomes a very different stance. So the shift goes from seeing the therapeutic system as involving resistance as to trying to find a way to cooperate with the family. So he says we've murdered resistance and buried it at the pre-family therapy system. There's also that notion of, it says it's similar to the Buddhist outlook, that it's homeostasis or stability is the illusion. Things are always changing, and that's really what they're tapping into. That was a very radical idea at the time. So when you do workshops and you work with folks, they're asking questions about, what do you do with a resistant client? What do you do with a hard to work with client? What do you do with the mandated client? In teaching workshops, that was every workshop, that question comes up. And they're thinking there are mandated clients and not mandated clients. And you have to do something different with the mandated client, that client's going to be more resistant. Mm-hmm. And already back in '84, when this paper was published, says it's much better to think of change as always happening, and your job is to find a way to cooperate with a client. Mm-hmm. When a client does something that you see as resistance, you should take that as the client trying to cooperate with you. So you have to look at what they're doing at that point and try to find a way to cooperate with that. And that meant moving in the direction that the family or the client wanted to move. Yeah. And I think that's the first part of how it's began to evolve, because when you say find a way to cooperate with a client, you're in a sense saying find the client's voice, listen to what the client is saying. Mm-hmm. On the client's terms rather than on the textbook's terms, or the way we used to do, on the terms of the way in which we used to do things. I think the idea of finding a way to cooperate with the client is still the foundation of solution-focused work. I think what we've done since that article was written, in my point of view, is, is that we've become more explicit that that means listening to what the client wants different in their life. And the pivot point around which everything revolves in a solution-focused conversation is, what is the client saying that they want different? You know? And we use different words for it. I mean, the miracle question evolved as a way to get at that, because the most difficult thing for clients is for them to express what it is that they want to have different. I mean, that's where a lot of the hard work, and I think most of the hard work, is in a solution-focused conversation. They struggle the most with that. If they get a clear vision of what they want different, usually what they're already doing that's working in that direction, what else they might do that might be useful, once those questions become easier for them to answer. Yeah. So I see it as, you know, as the pivot point in a solution-focused conversation. And I don't think they were saying that in 1984 as explicitly. It was there. They were talking about promoting change and promoting change in the direction the client wanted to go. But I think in part through Steve's writing about language and words and meanings, we got a clearer and clearer idea of we have to be listening so clearly to the words of clients for what they say they want different.
I think oftentimes when the idea of listening to what clients say, it's not a new idea, but there are new ways of doing it constantly. So for example, I used to ask coach trainees, and I said, so what do you think this person wants? Then I realized that people were then talking about, oh yeah, I think they want this, they want that. But actually, that question itself changed when I now ask coaches, what did you hear the clients say that they want? It's a very different question than what do you think that they want? Yeah. So I mean, that's one significant change for me. It might sound very small, but it changes the conversation entirely when we talk about their coaching. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just so fascinating that, you know, there are some things that was the heart of solution focus that we are still recovering and rediscovering through constantly learning from, watching our own work.
Yeah, I think that's true. If I think what even further complicates it, you said, what do you think the client wants? What does the client want? And you know, when I think about learners and people that I've worked with, they always hear those questions through their own filters, right? And what gets mixed in there are their good wishes for clients and their thoughts about what clients in those situations, or talk the way these clients are talking, what would be good for them. So you can even get more precise, and you can say, what does the client say they want, and tell me it in their own words. Mm-hmm. And that becomes even more precise. So I think you know, that's the challenge in teaching, because you have very well-intentioned learners, and they think they know what the client wants, and they selectively remember from the conversation what they think the client wants. But when they actually go back and look at it, say on a video, and they look for the exact words and try to pick out the words which give hints about what the client wants, oftentimes they learn that they're not listening as carefully as they thought they were listening. And I think this is a part of the evolution that all of us who are teaching solution focus are a solution focused way of doing a conversation are on the lookout for discoveries and ways of hearing more clearly, in the client's own words, what the client wants, and then creating space for them to construct even richer language and richer visions of what they'd like to have different in their lives.
Where it's already going is inductive way of practicing. So it's iterative. It's keep learning from your own practice. So that, I mean, I have this one session called Watch Your Language, and I mean that. Literally, you're watching not only your language as a static thing, but how you language it. Where we are going, I think, where we have been going as an entire field, I think, is what we call evidence is changing, I think. Defining what counts as the evidence is definitely changing, especially when we are studying dialogues. And microanalysis of face-to-face dialogue is a huge force, which is so new that we might actually hit some resistance. But definitely that's where I see this is going. And it's not only for SF, but all the other dialogic processes. Because microanalysis is not just for solution focus, it's for dialogue, studying dialogues. And sure, what does the client want? What do they say? And how do you know that's what the client wants? And watch it. And I think that's exactly where it should go, so that we are doing what we claim that we are doing. And you can see, you can make it so visible, right?
I would echo that and reinforce it by pointing back to something DeShazer said, which was only the observation of our own practice. And by that, he meant observation through a one-way screen or through a video of that practice, gives you the data you need to continue to develop your solution-focused practice. And microanalysis is a way, it offers us all sorts of opportunities for making direct observation of our own practice and seeing more clearly to what extent we're doing what we think we're doing when we do solution-focused, do a solution-focused conversation. So, and there's a lot of work and discovery to be done.
But the notion that solution focus is a question-based approach, and we teach people questions, and that was my biggest challenge. And now really understanding that solution focused is not a question-based model, but it's listening-based practice. So that every single conversation is different because it's a practice. And also, how do you actually make your listening visible so that it doesn't automatically lead to another question that you shoot at people? So I think where we might be going is also solution focused as a model might change to very specific practices that it will look different for 25 people. It should look a little bit different for everyone who's practicing it. I don't know, that's my wild dream. So I don't want to be watching 25 different tapes and hear the miracle question, this question, the phrase the same way with same pauses. I mean, that would be very boring. It will be useful, but it will be quite boring.
Right.
Actually, Peter's coming and Jennifer is coming. Jennifer Gerwing is coming. And this happens to be our 10th year of struggling with trying to spread solution focus in so many different ways. And we've learned tons from doing that. And so we are celebrating 10th year with a gift of learning. Mm-hmm. So what we are going to do is Peter is coming because he's like, to me anyway, he's the father of solution focus, and probably to you, Anina, you learned from Peter's book initially.
Absolutely.
Right, and then I think he is like that to so many people, and really hearing from Peter about these stories about how it came to be, how it came about. And then also Jennifer and Peter both very much in microanalysis of face-to-face dialogue, and that's what my piece is about as well, and seeing that as what's next. So kind of like seeing sort of what happened and then where are we going, quadrant 2 and quadrant 1. I think that's something that I'm so looking forward to actually having more of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this should be a lot of fun.
I don't think we are serving drinks, but it will still be fun.